Hey, welcome back. Let's answer the question. Is Xander worth the orbs? Answer to be determined. I'm going to go over a brief rundown of Legendary Xander, what his pros are, his cons are, a couple comparisons here or there. Something simple, nothing crazy. Let's get right into it. Legendary Xander seems like he's going to have a good amount of offenses with good attack and good speed with possibly low res, solely on the basis that he comes with attack speed catch 4. I don't believe they want to give out attack speed catch 4 or any sort of speed boosting skill to slower units, which is why I'm going to make that assumption that he's probably going to be fast with low res, but we'll see what they do. He comes with a really good weapon in the form of a slaying axe that grants no follow-up, accelerated cooldown per attack, not just his attack, but both attacks from him and the foe, plus 5 to everything, and he heals 7 HP after each combat, meaning that he has pretty good sustainability. He also has Chivalry, which comes with cancel remaining plus 1, essentially another plus 5 to everything since it inflicts minus 5 attack speed and defense on the foe, which is equivalent to plus 5 attack speed, defense, and res, and he gets damage reduction based on the percentage of current HP on the foe. So for example, if the foe has 100% of their HP present, then he gets 50% damage reduction per hit, which is really strong, and the lower the percentages, the less damage reduction he's getting. But chances are if the foe has low HP, then they're probably not going to survive an attack from Xander. Fodder-wise, he has attack speed catch 4, as previously mentioned, which is nice for any flyer and cavalry unit looking to boost up their attack and speed, and colorless feud, which can actually work pretty well for shutting down stuff like Flame and Elamine and Aether Raids. But outside of that, it just seems kind of niche in my opinion. But even then, the fact that Elamine is a mythic means that she's going to be more prevalent and more present in something like Aether Raid's Astra season as opposed to playing anywhere else. But that doesn't mean she won't show up regardless. So, for what it's worth, if you're looking to shut down Elamine's Holy Ground or anything of the sort, Sea Feud is right there for the taking. It's also worth mentioning that right now, Lyre is back on the Double Special Heroes banner. So if you want to get attack speed catch 4 and colorless feud, you can, provided that you have a copy of her. And overall, Xander just seems to be a really solid offensive axe cavalry unit. And if we break down all these effects, there is a lot going for him, such as his survivability. He gets healing after every combat for 7 HP, meaning that he can actually sustain quite well, but given that it's only 7 HP, that alone isn't exactly enough, since units are hitting harder and harder nowadays, but assuming that he'll probably have a respectable defense stat, he can actually go up against pretty decent melee foes, especially near saves. But it also helps that he gets damage reduction from his personal B slot, Chivalry, which scales really well if the idea is just to take out your foe, because the lower the foe's HP is, the more likely you're going to take them out, and even if you don't take them out immediately, you're still getting damage reduction properties, which is really nice. He also has Slaying and accelerated cooldown per attack, meaning that if the foe is able to counterattack or he's able to get 2 attacks out, provided that there aren't any guard effects present, he can actually Gale Force on every second hit, which is really good for hit and run strategies. This especially pairs well with the fact that he has Canto remaining plus 1 in his Chivalry B slot, meaning that he can trigger Gale Force, go in, attack the next unit, and then go out with potentially 3 to 4 spaces, depending on how far the next foe is, which is really good, again, for hit and run strategies. And going back to his survivability for a second, he has no follow-up and damage reduction, meaning that the only way he's going to be taking a substantial amount of damage is either if the foe attacks him for his lower defense stat, or if they have brave attacks, which can happen depending on the unit of course, but he shuts down any sort of guaranteed follow-up attack, and if he's only taking 1 hit, then it's going to be soaked by Chivalry, which is really good. Also, because he has accelerated cooldown per attack, he doesn't actually have to run Heavy Blade, which is a big perk. He could free up his A slot or his S slot for anything that boosts stats, so he's able to output even more damage or even survive more. And one final thing of note is that because he has a PRF B slot, he can score 1 bin extra above what he can already do with his dual skill, which he automatically comes with because he's a legendary unit. So as far as scoring goes for Arena, he's one of the better ones you have, especially on Fire Season. And while we don't have his exact stat line, there are things that can prove to be an issue for him, such as the fact that he does get healing from his weapon, which isn't exactly bad for survivability and hit and run purposes, but if you want him to act as a Wings of Mercy beacon, then that can actually prove to be an issue because he'll be healing and could potentially knock himself out of the 50% range and get even higher, meaning that Wings of Mercy and anything of the sort will be even more difficult to pull off. Beyond that though, there are Vantage units that can ruin his day, especially the ones that can attack twice in the enemy phase, such as Winter Altina, Arden, Laszlo, etc. Anyone that can basically attack twice in the enemy phase. Vantage units can probably deal a significant amount of damage to him, especially since the amount of damage reduction he gets is based on the amount of HP the foe has present at the start of combat. So it's going to be a bit more of an issue for Vantage units. But if he's able to eat a single hit, then he should be fine, provided that they can't double naturally anyway. But at that point, he's not going to be doing too much damage anyway. And that's pretty much it when it comes to his downsides, provided that we still don't have the stats, but we can still naturally assume he'll probably have some sort of dump stat, and it'll probably be his res. But even then, as a unit, he's really solid, both for Arena and for Aether Raids purposes. That being said, there are some comparisons that we can make, such as with Summer Dimitri, who just recently came out, and Grimoire, who came out the month prior. Summer Dimitri has Dual Phase Brave based on speed, or whether or not the foe has an active bonus on them, Slaying, Atrocity, Stats, and Canto remaining +1. You also have Grimoire, who has Dragon and Beast Effectiveness, Slaying, Stats, can inflict even more penalties based on the amount of visible buffs he has on himself, Fixed Canto for 2 spaces, Tempo from his C slot provided that the condition is met, which shouldn't be too hard, and if he can get his Harmonic skill off, he gets Treachery, which adds even more damage based on the amount of visible buffs he has, so similar to a Grand Blade effect. Now, despite all of them being Axe Cavaliers, I would argue they all do different things and fulfill different niches. Summer Dimitri, while has a similar amount of effects, does have Atrocity, which means his damage output is going to be significantly higher compared to Xander's, on top of having Dual Phase Brave, meaning that he's going to be attacking twice first before the foe can counterattack, which is really strong for just getting damage out. However, Legendary Xander has damage reduction in his B slot, meaning that his survivability is a lot better. So if you're looking to take a hit, then Xander is probably going to be your best bet, because chances are if Summer Dimitri has to take a hit, there's a good chance he'll fall below the 25% HP threshold, at which point his damage output suffers greatly. But then you also have Grimoire, who has Slaying, Stats, yada. But the difference being is that he has Tempo from his C slot, which I would argue makes him a better Gale Forcer, mainly because he doesn't have to worry about guard effects. Xander does have accelerated cooldown per hit, which is really nice just for getting it charged up, but he's still weak to guard effects, which does put a damper on whether or not he can Gale Force. On top of the fact that he does heal from his weapon, meaning that he can't act as a Wings of Mercy beacon, but he could still act as a hit and run unit thanks to the fact that he has Canto remaining built into Chivalry. So for what it's worth, if you're looking for a decent Axe Cavalry unit with good survivability, then Xander's the way to go. But if you're looking for a unit with better damage output, then Summer Dimitri and Grimoire are probably your better bets. And outside of that, there's the color share you have to worry about, provided that you don't have Fey Pass. If you have Fey Pass, you could just go and get them. But if you don't, then you have to share with Freya and Atri. Freya is somewhat underwhelming in what she can do overall. Freya has a distant counter weapon with damage reduction built into it, and whatever beast stuff she gets based on her movement type. She comes with attack speed solo 4 and pulse smoke. She can act as a decent Gale Force unit if you really need her to, but the fact that she doesn't have any sort of flow skill, or the fact that she doesn't have any sort of accelerated cooldown, means that it's going to be a bit harder for her to act as a reliable carry, or any sort of Gale Force unit whatsoever. But because she has damage reduction built into her weapon, she can actually survive a lot more. But Xander also has damage reduction, and the scaling is better, so you can make the case for either or. Either way, I would say Freya is probably the dud here, but even then, the fact that she is a mythic means that she doesn't really have any opportunity cost in the Gale Force composition. But then you have Atri, who's also a really good scoring fire mythic. She can score 190 BST because she has a PRFB in Divine Recreation. She has damage reduction on the foe's first attack, and then reflects a certain amount of damage back based on how much damage she takes. It's basically Ice Mirror to an extent, but she also inflicts an absurd amount of debuffs from her weapon and her PRFB. She has Fixed Canto 2, a guaranteed follow-up, and again, she debuffs for quite a bit. Honestly, fodder-wise, it's whatever, but if you're looking to just get mythics for scoring in Fire Season, this is probably one of your better options because she scores 190 BST, and she's a Fire Mythic, so you pretty much have a 66% chance of getting a decent Fire Mythic for scoring. In combat-wise, she's actually deceptively really tanky and really offensive. Thanks to the fact that she has a guaranteed follow-up, she inflicts all sorts of debuffs, and Divine Recreation. So for what it's worth, the color share isn't too bad. If you're looking for fodder, I wouldn't say it's really the strongest. It's still nice, but it's not anything impressive nowadays, especially since there are a lot more competitive options. Freya, at the very worst, can still provide extra lift on offense, which is really nice. So even if you don't use her as much of a carry or a Gale Force unit, she at least has some utility in Aether Raids. But outside of that, that's pretty much the color share, and I would argue that it's not too bad. I wouldn't say there's anything outstanding on the banner, but if you're looking for something that's just really solid, then Xander's probably one of your best bets. Anyway, that's my analysis. on Legendary Xander. Let me know if you're going to be pulling for him or not. By the way, let me know if you want to see more of these types of videos, just giving my overall thoughts on new heroes, new banners, yada 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 yada. Let me know what you think. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.